In over 3 decades, I've learned that truly great car dealerships are only great because of one thing: leadership. So I'm sitting down with the great men and women inspiring automotive on TimTalks, automotive leadership and beyond. Welcome, everyone. And oh, by the way, Happy New Year. Happy 2025. Hopefully you had an amazing holiday season with your friends and family. And I am pretty fired up today. Several times in my life, as you've seen me bring on here people that I've heard about, and then I get to meet in person, and you know the old saying, don't meet your heroes, right? And because they'll let you down. That is the antithesis of what it was when I had the privilege of meeting Troy Duhon, the founder and CEO, I believe, president of the Premier Auto Group. Just an incredible human being. And Troy, as busy as he is, said yes to coming on. As I always say, we're on the back nine now, and I want to give back. I want to make a difference. When my VP of Strategic Accounts, Andrea, said, "You've got to meet Troy. You guys are literally like what you know, with your faith and with your energy. You got to meet him." And when I met him, you know what? Just phenomenal. So with that intro, Troy, welcome to the first episode of 2025 TimTalks Leadership and Beyond. Welcome, my friend, and thank you so very much for your time.
Well, Tim, thank you for having me. I didn't know I was your hero. I thought you liked me because I was an LSU grad.
Well, we need to talk about that. I said one of, the fact that, and we're going to get into that story. We're going to get into, just your story in general. Let's just dive into it, man. I mean, you wait a minute. I mean, I know you bought your first dealership. I heard the video. I think I read up at 30 years old.
Yeah, I was the youngest Toyota dealer in the world, they told me.
How did that even happen? Like you were working inside the store, right?
Yeah, let's go way back. So in the 70s, my dad was in the car business. And back then, car salesmen would drink like fish, like literally bourbon and scotch on the showroom floor. So
among other things.
So my dad was a very successful car guy, but he became a social alcoholic.
Yeah. It's
a great story. My mother filed divorce. My daddy loved my mother, but my daddy loved bourbon and Coke. Mm-hmm. And he wanted to save his marriage. So his used car manager at the time tells my dad, take her to church. And he's like, do what? Take her to church? Yeah. So my daddy takes my mother to church, and they gave him the name of a church. Now, this wasn't some simple Catholic or Baptist church. This was a Pentecostal church.
Well,
he said, these people are crazy. But you know what? When you drink or you're an alcoholic, you're suppressing pain. Like that's, when you read about alcoholism, it's normally people that are numbing pain. And when my daddy walked into this church, Tim, he saw happy people. And he saw people that were smiling, singing, dancing. And for him, that was something different. And long story short, the third time he went back to church, he went to the altar and asked the preacher to pray for him. And my mother says it even to this day. I saw your daddy do something I'd never seen him do. I said, Mama, what did daddy do? He said, your daddy started crying. And, like hard men, you never see emotions. My dad cried for 45 minutes, Tim. Next day, my daddy woke up and went cold sober. So my dad did not go to AA, didn't do 12 steps. So all of a sudden in his mind, remember, he was an addict. So that means that every day he dreamed and craved rum and Coke. So that day, he didn't. And needless to say, that made him realize this God thing is real, because today I don't crave rum and Coke. Long story short, he got out of the car business, sold the dealership, and became a Pentecostal preacher. So I was born and raised in a crazy car dealer, tongue-talking, holy roly house. And I will be honest with you, as soon as my dad could get me to sell cars, which was 18 years old, I was a freshman at LSU. He got me selling cars. And, I used to tease my dad. I said, Dad, it'd have been really nice if you'd have gave me the keys to the business so I wouldn't have had to work so hard. And when your dad wants to get your attention, he says things like this: boy, let me tell you something. He goes, boy, let me tell you something. I gave you something more valuable than the keys. I gave you the wisdom to keep the keys.
Mm.
And, I never forgot that, Tim. So sold cars throughout LSU, every semester break, every summer break, I sold cars. That's how I paid for school. I was too proud to ask my parents for money. Started selling cars right when I graduated, became a small owner at 25 years old, took a Dodge store, took a bankrupt single point Dodge store to number 9 in the country, which was a big deal back then. Made enough money and actually got into negotiations on a Toyota store that was in litigation with Toyota. So everyone was trying to buy this thing. And I just convinced the parents, why sell it to that guy? Why not make a dream come true? I got the wherewithal. I'll get approved. I know I'm only 30 years old, but I can do this. And they sold it to me. So in 1995, December 15th, 1995, I opened up Toyota of New Orleans. And it was my first dealership on my own. Did very well with it. I mean, let's be honest. Anytime you get a Toyota store in the country, you're going to do okay, right?
Right.
And then from there, began to grow. And then in 2005, Katrina hit. And I had 5 dealerships at the time. I was 39 years old. And Tim, I'll never forget, I was in shock to see what water damage could happen. Like literally, I was a grown man on my knees crying because everything I had went underwater. I lost 1,200 cars. My insurance receivables were $35 million. So I want you to think about that for a second. And Tim, look, nothing at school, nothing in Dealer Academy, nothing I learned taught me how to deal with this. One day I got 500 employees, Tim. The next day, they're gone. And you don't even know if the city is coming back. And I ended up 4 out of 5 went completely underwater. And I ended up having one Nissan store that was dry. So I took all my employees that didn't evacuate who came back and I put them there. And that month we sold 730 new and used Nissans. Needless to say, that was a record month. And I'll be honest with you, I'll never forget the day. We took the Honda dealership, Tim, and we converted it to the FEMA Relief Center. So FEMA had no place to operate. So I told the mayor, if you get electricity to the Honda store, I'll let FEMA set up there. They did. Tim, we were running 1,200 cars a day. People who just needed diapers and supplies and cleaning supplies and dog food and cat food. And Tim, I'll never forget it. I watched the joy on my employee's face. And I said, you know what? This is what it's really about. This is what it's so about. And and I'm a faith guy. So I said, Lord, if you get me through this, I promise the rest of my career will be giving back. And at that time, I had 5 dealerships. Today, I now have 40. We're in 8 states. We have 2,000 employees. We do about $2 billion a year in sales. And I got to tell you, that was probably one of the strongest and most important commitments I ever made in my life. Because when I made it about others, Tim, one thing about Premier that's a little bit different, every dealership I have has an operating partner. So whether they have money or not, I give them ownership. And I let them become the partner. And as you have learned through Giving Hope, we go back into the community and we give back. So for me, I would say the defining moment was that day when I realized that this is what it's really about. It's about giving back. And I'll give you one last story. Katrina was 2005. In 2008, my daddy died. So my daddy worked with me. When my dad was in the car business, obviously he was never around. Like most car people, they work 6 days a week, 12 hours a day back then. So my dad was never around. But when he became a preacher, he tried to make up for lost time. But then when I got in the car business, he came back and worked for me part-time. So he made up for lost time. So I wanted to be there when my daddy died. And it went like this. The hospital nurse called me and said, Troy, you got to get here real quick. Your daddy is fading and he wants to talk to you. Now, I don't know if your listeners have ever, maybe you were there when your parents died or not.
Yeah.
A very emotional moment. And it was. So I got to the house as quick as I could. I walked in. My dad had tears coming down his cheek. He grabbed my hand with a double handshake. And he said, son, you're on a treadmill and you need to get off. Because what you're chasing, son, is wealth. And what you really need to be chasing is more of a godly legacy. And then, Tim, the next thing he said to me, I'll never forget. He said, son, don't you ever close down that food bank.
Mm.
I said, Daddy, why? He said, son, no one is going to remember how many cars you've sold in your career, but the good Lord's counting every time you feed his people. Tim, he put his arm out. The hospice nurse shot him with morphine because the cancer had gotten to the brain, so he couldn't deal with the pain no more. He never said another word and died on Sunday morning like he said he would. Now, I don't know if that gets you emotional, but it gets me very emotional every time I tell the story, because you know what? We're in the car business, Tim, and let's be honest, people come and go, so names change on building. He's right. He said, you'll be dead, long gone. Somebody else's name will be on that dealership. And it's so true that we put so much emphasis in selling cars and servicing cars. There's nothing wrong with that. There has to be purpose for the profit. That's what I tell my team. What is our purpose for the profit? And here, what we do a little bit different is every car we sell, every wrench we turn, money goes to Giving Hope, our foundation, and we build orphanages around the world. We now built 9, and we feed 5,000 to 6,000 people a day. So that's how Giving Hope started, Tim.
Look, I the similarities, a lot of people know my father was a pastor for 50 years. The car business, I've never had the privilege to own be a dealer principal, but I had the opportunity to speak at the Giving Hope Gala. And as soon as I was done, Troy takes me by the hand and says, I want to show you something. And he walks me in the back of the premier headquarters there in New Orleans, and people are running around like ants on an anthill, man. They're styrofoam boxes, and there's trucks coming in, and I took a minute in his office. I hide nothing. Some of y'all have seen me cry before. I'm just blessed, and I'm just overwhelmed that I get to do what I do. And I see people running around and they're feeding people, and trucks are coming in where they're getting every single day out of the back of a car dealership, of the home offices there. And then he walks me around and he shows me the pictures of orphanages in Honduras and all over the world. And, I've said it so many times, I'm officially, I guess we're both on the back 9 per se, unless I'm going to live over 100. And, and look, I don't run for my faith. And if somebody gets offended, I guess you can just turn me off. But my dad always told me this, and I don't know if it was original to him or not, but he said, son, because he had a stroke and he's in a home now, but what a godly example. And I lost my mom just 2 years ago. And what incredible godly examples to pour into the next generation as they poured into you, Troy. But my dad told me, son, never forget, with success and everything else, he says, soon your time on this earth will pass, but only what's done for God will last. But it will last and last and last. And brother, you get that. And I saw it firsthand. And we talk about selling cars a lot in here, and we talk about leadership, but I did use the word hero earlier. And look, I know, just like with our company, I'm country as cornbread, and I know every dog has fleas. There's no perfect automotive group. There's no perfect software group. You're in the news here, this happened. But at the end of the day, if leadership in the dealership, if leadership is steadfast, and, I tell people all the time, what do people say about you when you're not around? Right. Even when you have done an incredible job, brother. The fact that Andrea said, you've got to meet Troy. You guys are going to get along. I am just so encouraged by the fearlessness you have with your faith. It's encouraging to me. I'm encouraged by you answering your father's call about making a difference. And not only in your community, but around the world, and the impact that will make for generations. So let me ask you this, to that, whether it's a dealer principal, to whether that's a GSM, a new person, where do they start on leaving that type of legacy? Where do they wow, hopefully I'm inspired. How do I, obviously, let's just be completely honest. It's a little bit more difficult now to purchase a dealership. with the Publix and everything else, but not even buying a dealership, but just making, your mark in this space. What do you say to that new GSM, GM? How do you pour into those people that are new sitting behind the decks of your own dealerships? I mean, where do you start?
I would say this: if I'm running a dealership and I want to create a culture of, say, corporate compassion, or as we call it, profit for a purpose, I'm going to look in my own backyard to see what the need is. So, after Katrina, obviously food insecurity was a big issue. So whatever is the need, is it domestic violence? Is it sex trafficking? Here's a story. Here's a line I would tell anybody. Find the injustice that angers you or the passion that inspires you, because that's what you're called to. And then when you know what that is, you sell that vision to your employees, and then you challenge the organization to make a difference in that lane. Now, here's the beautiful thing. When you interview a Gen Z or millennial versus a baby boomer, the difference, Tim, human rights are a big deal to Gen Z. Big deal to Gen Z. And we have learned that when we do these things in the community, it's amazing to see how many of our employees come up to us and say, that's why I work for you. Not because of the pay, not because of the learning. It's because of what you do in the community, because you as an organization make me proud as your employee, because you're trying to make the world a better place. And when your employees have that emotional attachment to the business, then when they get that $5,000 signing bonus, or that master tech gets a $10,000 signing bonus, the wife says, you're not going anywhere, because the dealership you work at takes care of people in this community. So you make the emotional attachment based on a cause, an injustice, or a passion. So whether you're a GSM, a GM, a salesman, find the need in your community and be part of the solution.
Success leaves clues, guys. We've said that time and time and time again. And, Troy is saying what Patrick Abad said at Beaver Toyota and their involvement in their community. Kevin, I can go on and I'll forget names and people get mad at me. But success leaves clues. And it's just, when something happens, when people go to work every day and understand that they're working for something possibly even bigger than themselves, possibly bigger than that paycheck. Something happens when you lead that way, because Troy, so many, I've had the privilege and maybe not, but to see both sides, with CarNow and with the dealerships that we have, I see the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? The old Clint Eastwood movie. I see the Troy Duhons, but I also see dealerships that aren't ran with heart or ran with passion, and it's all about just get them in mentality and turn and burn and throwing paperwork and this and that. And I want to just bang them on the head, saying, guys, you don't get it. Success leaves. This is what success looks like. This is temporary and passing through. I think so many times, when we, as humans, whether we're in the car business or not, as far as leaders, when we get any type of success, and that could be even when I was a salesperson in the mid 90s, and I started in 89, but selling cars, and you get some success, then we start thinking we know everything, right? And then we walk into every meeting or every salesperson like we're the smartest person in the room. And I think that's where true leadership and growth comes, when you understand and you keep that open mind to think, I don't know everything. Let me look at my game film. Let me truly get better. Because I do believe that there's so many people in today's world with social media and, the staged, I saw a post the other day, somebody had a fake private plane and it was booked every hour on the hour every day because people on their social media accounts were acting like they were in a fake plane, or this car, or this guy,
I'll give you a great story on that one.
Please.
So as you and I both said, legacy, right? At the end of the day, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to build a wealth pot and leave it to my kids as a trust fund, which will ruin them? Let's be honest, that would ruin them.
Right.
I give them a legacy that lives past me. So my son goes, Daddy, all your friends have jet planes. I said, well, son, we got a jet plane. He goes, really? Where's it at? I said, it leaves only an hour every hour. It's called Southwest. And I said, your daddy ain't buying no jet plane, because at your dad's funeral, you're going to take the microphone and talk about that your daddy fed millions of people, built 50 orphanages around the world, and that will make you more proud than saying your dad had a G5. So it's about legacy, Tim, and it's about the culture. What culture do I want to have in my family dealership? Maybe I'm even in a publicly traded organization. How can I make the community a better place? It starts with you and what you're willing to do to change the culture.
It's incredible, and quite frankly, what led me to getting excited, and this is all leadership, and this is all it all leads to leadership on how you lead, whether it's your family or where you lead your dealership. But I told you the story. My wife and I and my kids, since 2018, it's like every other year we get punched in the face. Like my house burnt down in 2018. My dad had a stroke in 2020. My mom had cancer in 2022, died in 2023. And, my partner, like all these things happen, and you start feeling sorry for yourself. But at the same time, you have to lead. At the same time, you have to put that face on and encourage your people. And then I went on your story, and I started listening to all the things and hearing what you and your wife and your family went through. And I felt horrible about feeling bad for my stuff, because you went through worse stuff than I ever went through. So how do you, and I believe, God puts people in our lives that have walked through those minefields to tell the story of how they got there and how they got through. And that's the way, when I sent your story to my wife, she's like, oh my gosh, like it encouraged her. And she never met you or your family, but in your words, you've gone through things that a lot of people, hopefully, but a lot of people do go through, but haven't gone through. How do you stay resilient, love your family, encourage them, but then go to work every day and pull people up and pour into people and grow an incredible, one of the largest dealer groups in the country?
So what you're talking about is for the listeners, my wife and I buried 2 boys at birth. So the hardest thing you will ever do as a parent is bury a child. So we were diagnosed with Potter syndrome, which is where in the embryo there's no kidneys. Kidneys create amniotic fluid that allows the lungs to grow. So both boys, 04 and 06, right in the middle of Katrina, live 1 hour and the other one lives 7 hours. And in that pain, because your pain can become your purpose, or your pain can become your problem. So I decided that we were going to make it our purpose. So we adopted. I have a little Chinese daughter called Anna. I call her my Cajun Asian, right? So we adopted, and I had 3 other beautiful children. So we decided that moment that we wanted to make a difference. So we went to China to pick her up. We saw really how they treat these kids. And I felt like, wow, we got to do something different. So that's why you look at our pain, which is the child losing the boys, and it became our purpose. So now we build hope homes around the world. So we built hope homes in Moscow, Russia, Honduras, Gambia, Africa, India, Dominican Republic, Honduras, Lepo, Brazil. I built in Ukraine, went to Ukraine 2 years ago, which was crazy. And this past year, we went to Manila. So you think of all the people, Tim, who make money on me: Toyota, Ford, Chrysler, Nissan, Honda, right? Allied Bank, Capital One Bank, Cox Automotive, Manheim. All those people support Giving Hope when we built hope homes. So the beautiful thing is that we decided to take our pain and make it our purpose. So understand, when I told my son at my funeral, you're not going to talk about the G5 and the 200-foot boat. You're going to talk about the 50 orphanages that your family built. And that's my purpose. So that's kind of what that went through. And I would tell anybody who's going through listen, your pain can become your purpose. If you look at how can I make the world a better place for what I've gone through. So think of it. I lost 2 boys. I could have easily went off the deep end. Could have easily just started drinking like a fish. Could have easily sold every dealership I had. And I said, no, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do something crazy. So every year I build an orphanage. And that's crazy, Tim. That ain't change either, my friend. I mean, Giving Hope this year will give away $20 million of food. So understand that God has empowered me and he's given me a large responsibility. And I don't take that lightly, but I've now made it my purpose. Because really what I could have did during COVID is sold everything I had, and my grandkids would never work a day in their life, right? That's not what I'm called to do. Remember, find the injustice that angers you or the passion that inspires you, because that's what you're called to. I'm called to feed people who cannot provide, and I'm called to help the orphans.
I'm really very seldom, if you ask my wife, am I speechless? But what an incredible way to kick off 2025. Listen, what is your purpose today? We all go through stuff. We as leaders, I'm speaking to leaders. In fact, as the podcast continues to grow, everywhere I go, somebody's talking about this podcast or that podcast. And you never know if you're making a difference. And the whole idea was, at least me, I was a pretty good car guy, but I was head down at my desk, desking deals, buying cars, cleaning, I never got out and around to see what the great ones and how they were, building dealer groups and leading their people. And we wanted to put something that you could easily listen to in your commute or wherever, to where hopefully it made you better than you were when you got here. So hopefully we've done that today. You're listening to Troy. What an incredible story of unfortunate pain, but turning the pain into purpose. And, in life, sometimes when these bad things happen, I've been guilty of it myself. We speak, as I say, victimese. We start speaking, we become a victim. We speak victimese, and we get the joke, well, why is this happening to me? And not understanding, what can I learn through this? What are you teaching me through this? Because again, nobody gets out of here alive. What are people going to be saying to you? What an incredible way to display that to your son, and what an incredible legacy that you've already left and are leaving. Brother, I love you, man. I thank you for the time to be able to share your story. I'm going to give you the mic before we land the plane. Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, sure.
Before we land.
I would tell your listeners, 2025 could be the greatest year of your life. If you're willing to love unconditionally, don't love someone because you want something in exchange. Learn to love with no conditions. Learn to give when it hurts. Not your money. Everybody thinks it's your money. What about your time?
Yeah.
You ought to see the parents who send me letters and texts and emails and call me because their children volunteered at our food bank, because your 15, 16, 7-year-old kid needs an attitude adjustment, right? So sometimes if you just give of your time, where your coworkers, your employees, and your family see you giving, watch what happens when you make those two changes in 2025. Unconditional love with no expectations, and learn to give. 2025 could be the greatest year of your life.
Amen. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the one and only Troy Duhon, one of my new heroes, just incredible human being, incredible organization. And I am going to do everything I can do to give back, to serve you and your team, to continue that mission, brother. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for everything that you've done. Ladies and gentlemen, you have been listening to TimTalks Leadership in the Dealership. We're so thankful that you took a few minutes as this podcast continues to grow. If you're hearing it on YouTube, please just go and hit that subscribe button, no matter where you get your podcast, as we continue to try to grow. As we always say, no one is smarter than everyone. Y'all, let's just keep getting better together. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.